Oh, seriously? Who's out there? Or do we know?
Yep.
Yeah,
Amanda, April, Chase Downey.
Amanda, JC
Darcy Walker, who's from Maine. Originally.
Oh, and me.
I don't,
Emmy?
but
Yep.
the name sounds familiar. I wonder if,
All right. Let me hard part. We want to get your screen,
before I was a kid.
but I want to see you talking too.
But she looks like she's about 30.
I'll go back and forth.
Oh, I
You
did.
just, yeah.
I did. And I looked it up on LinkedIn.
I do that all the time. I don't think she looks that good.
Yeah, and we're recording, so we'll post it up with your
Okay.
flyers.
Because there's two Darcy.
Oh, and both in
And
marketing?
one has it.
Yeah, I said, we got 4 online and we
Okay,
got
do we
a-
need to use
I
my
would
stuff?
in the name.
So there's this one, which is who I thought she was.
That's me.
But she's a baby.
I don't know.
And so then.
Brian, do you need them to use the mic so
Do you
you're
think we need to
so
use
you're
the
hearing
mic,
it?
or can we just?
So what do I like, 19?
I'm gonna use it, I'm just gonna run the mic around when we do
Oh,
questions.
okay, so we
get it.
can.
You can
use
use that,
Oh,
and we'll
okay.
record off that, but when it comes questions,
Actually.
I'll ask people to, even though we're a small group, to wait for a microphone. so
Yeah.
we don't take-
They hear us there.
Yep, I've got my speaker up.
Then you must think I look 11.
Oh, okay, so like.
Seeing her LinkedIn photo shoot.
Well, and honestly, she looks young, but in her background picture, I think she's got older daughters.
Oh,
So,
Yeah.
So, yeah. My God, you, come on. You just 13, because you just had your wedding photo on Facebook.
yeah.
All right, I think we're gonna
Oh,
go ahead and get
hold on.
started,
Hold on, wait,
almost.
wait.
Waiting for the troll
Wait.
equipment to be ready.
And anytime.
Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Marcia Benson. I'm the director of the TRIO Student Support Services program on campus. And glad to welcome you today for the third part of what is Simpson's 2019 First Generation Day celebration. Just to give you a little bit of background about what we've done and what the celebration is, the Council for Opportunity in Education, which is an agency that advocates for opportunity in education for underrepresented students. About 3 years ago, they started a national initiative where they try to give incentives for higher education institutions to celebrate formally First Generation Day. There are more and more First Generation students that are going to college, and so in 2017, they started with a few incentives to get institutions to celebrate it. Didn't take off super well the first year, but this year was the third year, and it keeps on getting bigger and better. And for Simpson, this was really the first time that we celebrated as a whole institution First Generation Day. And on that day, not only do we want to celebrate our first generation students that are currently here, but also celebrate our faculty who were first generation students and our staff who are or were first generation students or have first generation students in their family as their children perhaps. So what we set out to do, we partnered with various departments on campus. And the biggest day was November 8th, which is the National First Generation Day. The date is the date in which the Higher Education Act was signed in 1965, and that was the act that created programs for access for underrepresented populations, access to education. So on that day, we partnered with a variety of offices, President's Office, Advancement, Alumni Office, of course, faculty development, faculty advising, and we were able to get enough partnership to have a celebration in the Black Box that lasted from 7:30 in the morning till 1 o'clock roughly in the afternoon. We had a first generation breakfast. Some alumni came back to Simpson who were first generation students. We had a first generation banner, which is now here on the table, and you're all welcome to sign either as former first generation students or as supporters of first generation students. We have some merchandise that we gave out and that we had created specifically for Simpson. So there are t-shirts also for you, buttons, sticky notes, And on that day, we had about 130-ish attendees. About half of those were students. The majority of the other half were staff, and we had a handful of faculty that participated as well. So part two was an event somewhat similar to this that occurred last week in Employee Council, and that was designed to be staff development for the staff portion of Simpson employees. And this is what concludes our yearly celebration, which is faculty development. So for this one in particular, we work closely with Barb Ramos and Kate Larson to not just be able to get this forum and this venue to have access to faculty, but also to tap on Barb's expertise in working with first generation students. So she will be giving the bulk of the presentation to you. We have something before she starts that we want to share with you that is what we think is a very special product, and it's a video, and Stephanie's going to tell you more about the video.
Hello, I think I know everyone in the room, but for those of you that might not know me, I'm Stephanie. I also work in the TRIO Student Support Services program. Simpson alum, was a first generation student here myself, so this is very special to me. In my role, I have the privilege of supervising our student peer mentors. We have 3, and this is the second year that group of students, they have different students this year, but that group of students have created a video to help us celebrate first generation students and raise awareness. So what's really exciting to me is that I don't have video making skills, as Marcia's Napoleon Dynamite would say. People like
Yeah, not
skills.
but not
Yeah.
really.
I don't have video making skills, but my students do, and so I was really excited to let them kind of run with the project. I just said, want to feature some first generation faculty and staff and students. You can come up with your own interview questions and make the video your own, use your own creativity. So what we're going to show you is pretty much entirely student created. I just provided a few gentle and then maybe not so gentle reminders as the deadline approached.
All right, here we go.
My name is Bahar Farid. I went to North High School. I'm a first year.
Well, my name is Barbara Martinez. I'm from Phoenix, Arizona, and I'm a second year at Simpson College.
Hi, my name is Walter Lane. I'm a 1981 grad of Simpson College, studying in accounting. I also have a JD degree from Southern University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I work in student development in the Office of Multicultural and International Affairs.
My name is Bobby Sullivan. I received my bachelor's degree from the University of Northern Iowa. Later, I went on to receive my master's degree from Oregon State University. Both of those degrees are in the area of education. I am now the Director of Career Development at Simpson College.
Coming to college to me meant that I accomplished an obstacle that I didn't really necessarily understand at the moment in time. Because first of all, I thought I was just going to go to community college and then work my way up and go to ASU like everyone else. But I viewed going to college, specifically Simpson, as like a huge accomplishment, because everyone else in my grade or everyone else in my community didn't view themselves as like a private school 1,000 miles away from their family. So, yeah.
My mom did not finish high school, and my father did graduate from high school. And so it was, I still remember having a conversation with my mom, telling her that I was going to go to college, and I was going to go to a college that was far away from home. And so it did give me this sense of accomplishment. And I know it certainly made her proud too, the fact that her kids were going to college.
The main motivation for my family and I was fairly career driven. My parents wanted me to have options in terms of the careers that I could have. And my initial career decision was teaching. Watching women in our community, that was one of the most attractive positions. They were able to give back were also still able to have families, and to have some of the balance that they were looking for in their schedules. And so going to college for me and for my family at the time meant that I would have the opportunity to become a teacher, which it required that undergraduate degree.
It's everything. I'm first generation, and my brother went to a community college, but like I'm the first one to experience a 4-year college, so.
I have to say, not understanding how college works or what resources there were for me, like, it's not like high school at all. And plus, I didn't necessarily have someone to tell me, like, this is how college works, because neither one of my parents, like, completed or went to the higher level of learning.
It's like the paperwork. I'm the first generation, like you said, so it's harder for me to like, fill out the paperwork. Like when I reach home for help, like they wouldn't know. So like I was like reach out to like other people that have been to college, so they can help me with like, the paperwork and all that, like, and like the experience too. So.
It was just total encouragement. They know that it would be a challenge and it would be difficult, but total support. They encouraged me to, you know, strike out and try things on my own. So that was total encouragement and support.
No, not really. Everybody here is essentially nice and helpful, so like I'm not afraid to ask for help. And I think they're like everybody's willing to help me. So.
One of the first times I can remember feeling out of place was moving into the residence halls, and students whose families had gone to college had so much more that they had brought with them. So whether it was supplies or appliances or decorations or things, my family we wouldn't have thought to bring those things. And so I can remember that move-in day feeling, gosh, I am different than those who are here who have a long history of knowing what it's like to be at an institution like this.
Honestly, no. I felt comfortable as a first generation student because I knew that this is what I need to be doing and I need to be.
Reaching out was never the issue for me. There was lots of friends and people that came from a similar background, so it was very comforting environment for me to be in at Simpson College.
I think I'm a shy person in general off the get-go, but once I get comfortable, I'm okay with asking questions. So yeah, I was scared to ask where the financial aid place was because specifically that dealt with money and I just always wanted to like push that aside. Yeah, I did. Like I was always worrying about money every single weekend. Like, oh, I can't spend this much, I can't do this, I can't go out because I'm like set with such a small restriction of money. And I mean, I still have financial problems now, worrying, not like monetary wise, but it's become more lax, I would say. I'm not like worrying about it as much.
So half my savings at home, so with my mom, so that way I don't spend all of my money. So like if I need it, I give my mom this.
Like a computer lab fee, I didn't know I was gonna get charged for that. I'm using it, everyone else is using it, why are you charging me for this? You know, and it's not even working half the time, but.
Finance, I remember knowing our director of financial at Simpson at that time. His name was Bill Geiger, and I think we were all on a first name basis with Bill. And so, but Simpson certainly provided opportunities to get help, provide things like books and sometimes other items. Travel home was very important for us.
Tutoring. I went to the academic resource too.
No, but there are resources that have helped me, like career development. Like I went last week and I finally have like a better understanding of what I want to pursue. Do I use the library a lot? Yes, I do. That's a resource. That's another resource on HealthSuite that I forgot to mention. How has it helped me? Honestly though, it's helped me tremendously because I have a really great advisor that helps me set up my classes because I know that I was confused on what I'm supposed to be picking for myself, for my major or whatnot. Or she helps me find scholarships that I'm not gonna go out of my way to look for. Or she reminds me that, hey, I have to set up a goal for myself. So it always keeps me like accountable for, oh, let me go to the career mill. That was a goal that I had to do and got done.
I think we need a round of applause for our fabulous students. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Barb Ramus, Professor of Teacher Education and Director of Academic Advising at Simpson. And it's been wonderful to work with Marcia and Stephanie and Kate Staff for faculty development to put today together. As you might notice on your handout, Marcia found a fabulous article about teaching first-generation college students. And we will provide a link to that article that has a lot more detail in it, but I wanted to share some of those things with you. The first place to start is, who in the world are first-generation college students? Here at Simpson, our definition is that neither parent has completed a four-year degree. So who are we talking about? Just to name a few: Senator Elizabeth Warren, Justice Sotomayor, Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz, and me. So I think that there are a lot of faculty and staff who are first-generation students, were first-generation students, and I think that it's very important to our current students who are first-generation to understand that many of us have been first-generation college students as well. And so I know that when I picked up my t-shirts on Celebration Day, I quickly changed and wore it to class and shared that with my students. And I could just see the smiles on many of their faces, thinking, others have been in my shoes and they have succeeded. Here's what we know about first-gen students. It will likely take them longer to complete their degree. That might be because of financial issues. It may be because of pressures at home. And so they may have financial responsibilities at home, taking care of siblings. There's a laundry list of reasons. Typically, first-generation college students are coming from lower-income families. And if you think about the connection between income and having a college degree, that seems to make sense. We also know that there's a higher dropout rate with first-generation college students. And again, for a variety of reasons, some stop out and return and finish, but they do have a higher dropout rate. Here at Simpson, 40% of our first-year students this year are first-generation students. And so thanks to Tracy Dynison for that statistic. So when we start to look at our student population, we're talking about a large number of our current students. One of the things that I think first-generation college students will say to you is, don't try to fix me. I'm not broken. But there are some things that you could do that would be helpful to me and could aid in my success and my completion of a degree while I'm here. When I went to NACADA, the National Academic Advising Association, our keynote speaker hit this very hard. And they said, use caution. Don't start thinking in a deficit way about our students. Look at their strengths and know that they're able to succeed here. So what I'm going to be sharing with you are some evidence-based, high-impact teaching strategies that are particularly relevant to first-generation college students. But what I do want to say is they're all evidence-based, high-impact teaching strategies. They're good for all of our students. But these are ones that in particular will help us reach out to our first-gen students. On the back of the first page of your handout, you kind of have a note-taking place, and then I also have some examples of some of the things that we'll talk about. The first is transparency. And I think that as you met the first gen students in the video, they talked about not knowing and not understanding and not having the same information base as others. So if we can be incredibly crystal clear about what we were talking about, it really helps them. And so when we think about teaching, we need to be incredibly clear about what do I want my students to do? Why do I want them to do it? And how will I evaluate the work that they're doing? I think that all of us, I think I can almost say, I know all of us in our heads as faculty members, we know this. We spend a lot of time designing our courses. We spend a lot of time designing our assignments. And there's a lot in our heads that we don't fully share with students. And especially for first generation college students, I think it's especially important. Sal Myers from our psychology department led a faculty development session right before classes started on transparent assignments. And sadly, there were only 2 of us there. But if you're interested in this idea of transparent assignments, Sal certainly has additional information. If you look in your handouts, you'll see something called Personalized Professional Development Task Card. As I attended Sal's workshop, I was designing a new course for me called Exceptional Learner. And I had started to put together an assignment called Personalized Professional Development, which K-12 teachers are doing in the field now. And task cards are a way that K-12 teachers help students with special needs to understand assignments. So I had started to put together something like this as an example for my students. And then after I went to Sal's workshop, I did some further revision. So if you look at this, a lot of my thinking about the course and this assignment and how it fits and why I wanted the students to do it and exactly every step in putting it together is outlined for them. Now, I know some people might say, but they should know, they're college students. But I think that what we're saying is first generation college students, they don't know. And something like this, especially in 100 and 200 level classes, until they start to pick up on the things that we just need, are very important. You'll also see on the next page that there's a rubric that goes along with this assignment. And so inside of Moodle, there is a rubric feature under grading. And I've done some professional development workshops on using rubrics inside of Moodle, and I use them with most of my assignments. And I will say, there's some setup at the beginning, but that invested time pays off greatly after the fact. So as I'm grading, I can click the cell and I can add my comments. Moodle will total it all up and put it into the grade book. That's after the fact. Probably the more important part of a rubric is what happens before the students start working on the assignments. They are able to view the rubric under the assignment. They can see exactly what the expectations are, and they can plan their work knowing what your expectations are in the end. And so I think that transparent assignments paired with rubrics are definitely something that we could look at with students. I think I'm going to go through all the techniques and then we'll have a conversation. Another important idea to meet the needs of first generation students are the ideas of modeling and talking about class discussions. Class discussions at the college level have a certain culture, certain expectations that may be very different from discussions that happen at the high school level. And then we add into that not only is different at the college level, but they may vary greatly across disciplines. So if I'm a first generation college student and I'm in a literature class in the English department, as we're analyzing and dissecting a piece of literature, that type of discussion may be remarkably different from the kind of discussion I might have in a biology class or in an education class. And so for the first generation college student, it's hard to navigate what is happening with discussions. So some of you may be familiar with the term metacognition, thinking about your own thinking. This author talks about meta discussions. So let's think about discussions, and then let's model that. And so a couple of techniques for doing meta discussions might be a fishbowl activity. So if they're working in small groups, one small group is actually having the discussion that you're expecting in class. Another small group is in a circle outside of the discussion, and they're watching how the discussion is taking place. What are the strengths of the discussion that's happening? How could they make that small group discussion even richer? It could be in a small group, or it could be in a large group discussion. We also need to think about what really are our expectations in our classrooms related to discussions. And again, can we be transparent with our students about what our expectations are related to discussions? So in your handouts, you will also find a nice web piece on discussions. And it's asking you to be really reflective in your teaching about your purpose of discussions and what your expectations are, and then how do you communicate that out to the students? Is it generating a guide for them? Is it doing some kind of a fishbowl activity? And really understanding the culture and climate of college discussions. Another big issue for first generation college students is the idea of stereotype, threat, and imposter syndrome. So stereotype threat is the idea that there are some stereotypes about particular groups, and typically negative in nature. And so if I identify myself as a member of that group, and I don't want to live out that stereotype, I'm working very hard to overcome it, but at the same time, running in my head and running in my thoughts is that stereotype. And first generation college students will have those messages running in their heads, and they're working so hard to overcome them that those messages in their heads are exhausting to them. And so they're spending a lot of energy thinking about the stereotype, trying to break it, and that is negatively impacting their performance, and they very well may end up having behaviors that are exactly like the stereotype. The other issue is imposter syndrome, and I laugh hard about this because I think a lot of faculty members talk about imposter syndrome as you started in higher education. It's like, I don't know enough. I don't really belong here. And I think that the graphic that's on the screen just says it all. Here's this tiny little circle of what I know, and here's this great big bubble of what I think everybody else knows. But the actual reality is, I do know as much as everybody else, and I'm absolutely fine. But first generation students are always doubting and always questioning. It feels like everybody else knows, and I don't know. I think that Bobby Sullivan's statement of moving into her residence hall room, man, everybody else knew to bring decorations, and I didn't know. And if I didn't know that, what are all the other things I don't know? I don't really belong here. I shouldn't be here. Right now, I'm taking an online course on academic advising in first generation college students. And in one of the videos I watched for that course, there was a young lady that said going to her first football game was a time that she felt so out of place. She said there were so many students who met their families to go to the football game, and the students were legacies, and everybody knew what you do at a college football game. And she said, I'd never been, I didn't know anybody who'd ever gone to a college football game. And as I was standing there ready to go to the football game, I just had this realization, everybody else knows what to do, and I have no idea what happens at a football game. And this feeling of isolation, and I'm an imposter. If I don't know that, I certainly don't belong here. And so a key message for first generation students is you belong here. And we can't tell our students that enough. They need to hear it over and over and over. And again, Ed Nakata, our keynote speaker, said this is something that we can't overstate. He had us just turn to the person sitting near us and look at them in the eye and say, you belong here. And you should have seen the whole room smile. Just to hear the words, you belong here, is impressive. And I'm going to kind of call out Brian Steffen with his permission. He does a wonderful job with his SC 101 first year seminar during orientation and registration. They've been through a long day, they just registered for their classes, and I've heard him give this speech multiple times to his small groups, and he says, yeah, today's a little overwhelming, isn't it? There's a lot going on. He said, but you know, I want you to know, you're here because we picked you. You applied and you were accepted. And Simpson doesn't accept everybody to come here. So we picked you because you belong here. And you might have some doubts, you might feel overwhelmed, and he said that multiple times. We picked you. You belong here. We want you here. And I think, again, that's just a perfect time to let our students know, we picked you, and you belong here. And you may have those doubts, you might have that little bit of imposter syndrome, but you do belong here. Another interesting idea is the idea of building our students' cultural capital and not making assumptions about their background knowledge. And so there's a couple of cute cartoons I found. The first is a student sitting in geology class, name 3 types of rock, and the answer is classic, punk, and hard, of course, right? Or the philosophy 101 class where they're told to bring Play-Doh, and one student shows up with Play-Doh and says, oops, I didn't understand. So those are cute. But the reality is some of our students do not have the same experiences for a variety of reasons. So when we're in class and we reference, oh, and when you go to an art museum, followed, our assumption is all of our students have been to an art museum. And that may not be the case. And they may feel incredibly lost. It may be a piece of literature. We assume that everybody has read this poem, but they haven't, or that they have visited a particular place in the United States that may be even local to us. And so our assumption is, oh, well, you're from Central Iowa, and so therefore, surely everybody in my class knows about this place and has been there and seen it with their own eyes. So this is a caution that as we make those references to cultural experiences and cultural knowledge, that we make sure that we provide an explanation and we continue so that they can actually build their cultural capital. And so to not make the assumption, oh, all of my students are familiar with this, and then I carry on from that point. The next is academic culture, and I think at Simpson we've had some pretty significant conversations about academic culture. Academic culture is the idea that college is a strange and unusual place, and there's a particular culture and language that exists here, and not everybody is familiar with it. And so I think that as we heard the video that our students put together, this becomes very evident. Things like, oh, I have to fill out paperwork. I don't even understand what the paperwork is for. I don't understand how to gather this information. We will often say, and take this form to the registrar's office. Registrar, that's a word I don't know. What in the world does a registrar do? And then where is the office? And when I get there, what do I say and do? And they need assistance with that. Office hours, first day of class. And you'll see on the syllabus that my office hours are listed. I have no idea what office hours are. What does it mean, and what do you expect of me if I come to office hours? Can I stop by and visit because I think you're an interesting person? Do I need to come with questions about an academic topic? What am I supposed to do with office hours? What is the syllabus? What do I do with it? We hand it out and we say, the syllabus is posted on Moodle. Well, what do I find there? And because we have academic freedom, each syllabus is different, right? We have our own policies regarding attendance and participation. And if it's listed for a particular date, does that mean that I read that assignment before I come to that class? Or is that what you'll start me on, and then after class, I should read it? And so all of those kinds of things about academic culture are very foreign to our students. That's just on the academic side. Then start to think about the social side. The majority of our students, when I talk to them, have never shared a bedroom with someone until they come to college. And so just think about all of the social negotiation that has to happen when you're in a very small space, maybe smaller than your own personal bedroom at home. And now you're asking me to share it. And on top of that, you're asking me to share it with somebody that I didn't meet probably until I got to campus. And when I have problems, how do I resolve those problems? Because I've never been faced with issues with living with somebody else, because I've never done this before. Navigating food service and the cafeteria, and when do I eat? And what is my meal plan? What is the difference between board and flex? And what do I do if I run out? Because our students who are from out of state, international students, they're here eating every single meal. Then we have our other students who have decided they're not eating breakfast, they're gonna have a granola bar in their room, and they are going home on weekends, and then they have all this accumulated money in their food service plan. So we start to think about all of these things that are a part of academic and college culture that are hard to navigate. Now we have to remember what we heard from people like Walter Lane and our students in the video. Who do I ask? So I don't know these things and I have problems, but I can't ask a parent because neither has completed a 4-year college program. And so we have to work to build relationships with our students almost immediately so that they do feel like they are welcomed and there are people that they can ask those questions. And that I know we say it sometimes, there is no dumb question, because they do feel that imposter syndrome of I'm the only person that has this question. Everybody else knows. And so to make sure that they are able to ask those questions. So what I'd like us to do with our time now is, that's a lot of information. But the question is, so what do we do with this? What can we do in our classes? What can we provide to our students? So what I'd like to do is give everybody a couple of minutes to jot down some things or talk at your tables and say, here is something I could do starting today or next week, and how do I put some of this information in action? And I do know that we have several faculty members that are zooming into this meeting, and so I hope that they'll kind of think, but then they can share through Caitler's stuff their comments too. So let's take a couple of minutes for conversation and action planning, and then I'd like us to share some of the ideas of what we can do.
Can you give me about 15 seconds before you can start again so I can start the tape? Cool. A lot of people.
And by the way, if you're attending and you have not signed up for the drawing, there is $50. So, you know, make sure, oh, thank faculty development and Kate's committee. Oh, yeah. 7-2.
I know. I think you have Well, I think that's my thought.
Brian, I think we should start back up and there's good stuff happening. So let me know when you're ready.
Go ahead.
So I am hearing some fabulous conversation. I think that we need to share with a larger group. I do want to say Brian Steffen is kindly recording this for a podcast, and so he has a wireless microphone so that he can record and then share out our comments. And so he will be bringing the microphone around. Who would like to share something that you'd like to do, or a conversation from your table, or a question that you might have?
Now we know how our students feel.
Thank you, Tracy.
So I'm actually going to call on Amy. We were talking about how our first year students, you're saying, don't understand idioms, like those idiomatic expressions at all. So things like, don't aim for the low-hanging fruit, and they look at her like she's throwing three heads, you know? And I'm saying, well, there's also regional idioms and regional culture. They don't understand different elements. And I still explain to students every, like, at the very beginning, you need to greet everybody when you walk across campus, because that's one of the expectations here. And my friends, like my students from Texas and Chicago, look at me like, why would you ever do that? And then you pair that into all of the other sayings that we have, and then you layer in your pop culture references that are really not applicable now. And on a daily basis, I hear this. Yeah, that makes you become even more confusing.
It's absolutely true. And so we're putting layer upon layer, right? So Rich and I lived in Kentucky for 2 years, and I had a good friend who grew up in Louisiana. She was in our apartment, and I said, would you like some iced tea? And she said, I don't care. And I said, oh, okay. So I go to the kitchen, I make 2 glasses of iced tea. I grew up in Iowa. I don't care means, I don't care if it's not an imposition, either way, but you have it. So she looks at me oddly and she says, I said I don't care. In Louisiana, I don't care is short for I don't care for any. And so, that little example. Rich and I just got back late last night from a program review of 2 colleges up in Minnesota. And as we visited with students of color, international students, out-of-state students, they referred to Minnesota culture over and over. And I think that those of you who are faculty who did not grow up in the Midwest, and in particular in Iowa, there is a shift. I know Jan Everhart spoke at length about trying to understand Midwest Iowa culture that was unfamiliar to her as a faculty member. So we've got this idea of cultural capital, we have the academic culture, we have Midwest culture, we have language issues. And so all of these things are starting to layer up for our first generation students. Thank you for that. I think that's important. Other things, Sharon.
This was not from our table discussion.
It's okay.
I hijacked the mic. But Ron wanted me to say something about an experiment that I did a little while ago with actually saying on the first day of class, it has to do with the you belong here thing. Actually coming out and saying that I wanted to welcome everybody. I kind of thought it went without saying. I mean, you all know me and I love all of my students and I didn't need to say anything about it. But I tried it. I tried saying, you are welcome in this class. If you had French before, if you haven't had French before, if you're a freshman, if you're a senior, any identity marker that you might identify with and named off a whole bunch of possibilities, you belong here. You are welcome in this class, and I'm thrilled that you're here. And that's going to be our great strength in this class, is that we have so many different perspectives. And I kid you not, the first time I did that, a couple people cried. Yeah, I couldn't believe it. Like, I thought it went without saying. I thought I was saying something that was just so obvious that, no, literally there were 2 students in tears, and one student said out loud that it's the nicest thing anybody has ever said to me.
And think about how little time that took and how little preparation it took just to say, you're welcome here. I talked to my class on the first day about you're joining a community of learners. We're in this together. We're here for a purpose. But I don't think I've gone as far to say, you all belong. I have a diversity and inclusion statement in my syllabus, and we briefly mentioned that. But I just want to turn it into the words, and you belong.
I think
Thanks, Sharon.
I would encourage that, and I would also say that in that class and in every class after that, I noticed a qualitative difference in the number of hands that went up, the number of people willing to say something in class, the number of questions that I got. It changed the whole dynamic. So I really encourage people to give it a try.
And along that note of making just minor changes in languages, and I, of course, picked this up from Facebook, so it's got to be like research-based practice, right? Changing your question of, do you have a question? So what questions do you have? Or what questions can I answer so that you'll be able to get started on this assignment? So your assumption then is, you all have questions. And so then it's not as scary. Do you have questions is implying, well, you really shouldn't. I suppose that if you have one, I'll take the time to answer. So that tiny shift, and I made that shift in my language, and it made a remarkable difference in the number of questions and the quality of the questions that I got. Thanks, Sharon.
Could I add one thing? I mean,
Please.
I've dealt this term with students who, in addition to being first generation, are also Simpson Promise.
Yes.
And in one case, is also a transgender student of color.
Yes.
And I made an error in class very early in the term by referencing this student as her. By the way, the student had never said preferred he. I did know that from talking to other people, and I said her, and I felt horrible about it. I didn't want to make a point of it in class there. When the class was over, I said, can I talk to you for a second? Sure. And I said, I really want to apologize. I know you prefer he and his, and it just slipped my mind. And the student said, thank you. Because one of the things we think right away is, oh, they're going to be offended, and all they wanted to know, and the student said is, first of all, a lot of people call me her. You're the first one to ever apologize, and it makes me feel like you care.
Yes, 100%.
And so I think that, a lot of I absolutely agree. There are things that we need to do with first generation students, and the events of the past week or so at our college have indicated that there's a lot of things that we go into with assumptions and everything that we need to work at. And so I'm really happy to see this work happening here.
Well, and this is a place of learning. It's a place of learning for our students, but it's a place of learning for us as well. And I had a similar experience. I asked students to let me know their preferred pronouns, and the student preferred they, them, and I said she. And before I had finished saying the word she, I recognized it. And I immediately said, I apologize. You made your preference known. And then I repeated my sentence with they in it. And she talked to me after class. They talked to me after class as well. And it was the exact same reaction. And so it was, you cared enough to realize you made an error and you apologized and you fixed that. Other things that have come up, Kate.
I'm not going to turn the camera on myself, so sorry those of you.
Brian can do that.
I just had two quick things to share. One thing that I have not really thought about, but we tell our LED and high school teachers to always stand outside your classroom and welcome students in, right? So stand there and be welcoming. I made a point to do that this year more than I have in others. I can't believe the number of random students that just didn't know where they were going. Like they were in the library and they're like, are you my professor? Is this where I'm supposed to be? And it's hilarious. I just stand outside with my coffee and my smiley face at 8 a.m. in the library, and I, in the weeks after, stopped doing it because we get busy and we get behind our computer screens. And so this has been very helpful to remind me, hey, I would yell at my K-12 students if they got too busy to be a welcoming piece. And so just that moment, not even just students in my class, anybody that's walking down the hallway that could get lost. And so all I can think about were how hard it is to find a classroom on the first day. Like you don't know exactly where you're going.
Definitely. And how you start class. And if you do have that, I know 10 minutes is not enough time for a class to exit and for you to set everything up, but I teach at 8 o'clock, so I'm there very early. And to know something about our students and make mention of it. I had a student who played in the pit for the Magic Flute. Rich and I went on Friday, and this morning I said, we so enjoyed it. That must have been an incredible amount of work. And then to be in the pit and be on stage instead of actually in the pit. I follow on Twitter all of our athletic teams. And then I know who's a football player, I know who's a basketball player, I know who plays softball. And I can make mention that about, hey, big win, or oh gosh, you guys are so close. And again, like Kate said, the smile on their face, and they're recognizing that little bit, and how much time does it take? I mean, I'm on Twitter anyway. And then I just am recognizing that I know the littlest bit about them, and it makes them feel like they belong. How about something from the table back there that you talked about?
Okay, one of the things that I've done this semester, and it was a recommendation from one of the things at the beginning of the year, was setting up hours in Kent.
Yes.
And so I have office hours and I have hours in Kent. And what I've noticed about the conversations is they're vastly different. What happens in my office when students come in and talking about class, talking about material, talking about I'm gonna miss, when can I make up, what can I make up, things like that. In Kent, I have students that will just grab a coffee and sit with me and talk about life. And so it's more of a getting to know each other in Kent, because I think it's less intimidating for them. So I just kind of set myself up and they sort of just come and hang out with me for a little bit, and it just is more interactive, I think.
Definitely, our physical space does impact our relationships and our conversations. I'll actually be at some point talking to Kate about a faculty development session on our office space. I went to a fantastic session on how the physical environment can impact our conversations and their level of comfort. And there's not just a single right answer about what we do with our spaces, but at least to be thoughtful and intentional about the items that are in our offices and where they're located. And so, yes, that physical environment. And if they're more comfortable, coffee shop by the chapel here in Kent, I think that we can certainly do that. I want to take our last 5 minutes to have people share what's one thing that you'll commit to from this. It doesn't have to be gigantic, it can be small. Maybe it's something that's mentioned, maybe it wasn't. Who'd like to go first? Hey, Sharon.
This is with my CMG hat on because, as you probably know, I advise a lot of students, in fact, all of the students who are undergraduate at CMG. And I will commit to, because I'm the person who often meets with them before they even go to their first class, to finding out, feeling out how much additional support somebody might need. So learning a bit more about how familiar they are with academic culture, or how they're feeling about the experience, rather than just making sure they know which books they're supposed to buy for the first class.
Right. Someone else? What do you commit to? Patty? Yes.
I commit to stealing from Sharon the explicit "you belong here, you are welcome," and it's beautiful and impactful and seems so incredibly obvious. And I'm always thinking about diversity and inclusion and all that broadly, but this is personal, and it's just all the difference. So thank you for sharing that.
Awesome. Someone else?
Do I turn on?
Please, Brian.
I think one of the things I take away from this that we should all do is that we have to understand that all the work we do is for them. They are not working for us. I think that we all explicitly understand that. I don't think that we all always implicitly live that.
Yes.
Right. So, many of the examples you've given today of, do you have a question? Well, that's designed to say, well, why would you have a question? Because I'm the greatest instructor in the world. When in fact, we may or may not be, but I think back, as many of us came to my first year experience, and probably being like a year and a half into it before I felt any sense of comfort at all in my environment. And mainly because I was a first generation student, didn't know, like, you should pack more than 3 days worth of clothes when you go to college. That's honest to goodness something I did. I'll just do the laundry. Of course, it was 50 miles away. It made no sense. So, but I really encourage us to do that, is to say, everything we're doing, when I'm standing in front of a class of 30 or 3, I'm here for them.
Yes.
They are not here for me.
And I think that something that you're saying is, it's not just that we know that, we have to make them feel that. So when I was in my teacher prep program, students in class were saying, I care about my students. And the professor said, but do they feel it? Do they know it? It literally does not matter that you care unless they know it and they feel it. And that has stayed with me for a long time. And I think that that's what Brian is saying, is intellectually, we're saying we're here for you as students, but it doesn't matter unless they actually know it and feel it. So I really appreciate, Stephanie, yeah.
This is not a commitment, but it's sort of a comment on those last things that came up, and a comment on the intersectionality, I think, that we talked about with the cultural differences, all of it. Sometimes I feel like we think and we hear that faculty, they don't know. I don't know if that student's first generation, so I don't know if I should do this or whatever. And in our experience, what works for first generation students works for all students. And so all of these things I think are high impact practices for every student. So just a little comment at the end.
Absolutely. So I want to thank all of you for taking time to be here. And I do have to share my favorite first gen experience from my college days. I didn't know that you had a major in college. And I got all the way to the end of my sophomore year when my advisor just simply said, "What's your major?" I'm like, "Huh, what?" I just saw the catalog as all these cool courses and I was randomly picking and nobody told me, and how would I know? And I got 24 hours to come back and see what my major was. And that was my only guidance. And thankfully something clicked and I said elementary education and it put me on this path. But seriously, the tiniest things our students will not know. And thank you for those practices. Faculty development's trying something different today. Instead of snacks, you might have seen that there was a drawing for $50. And so I think Kate's gonna draw now.
And it's one of our online people, Amanda Martin.
Amanda, thanks for joining us. Kate will be in contact. So I don't know if that brought you out or just a learning experience, but thank you all for being here. And thanks for all that you do for all of our students, and especially first gen students. Thanks for being here.
Sounds like that was fixed.
Thank you.